things I wanted to study going to university, the first that came to mind was psychology. I've always been interested in why people do the things they do, but I was told that there aren't very many opportunities in terms of work to do after school. And so my next instinct was to go with business. I've always been interested in business. I've always started little ventures ever since I was little, but my family wanted me to study law. Makes sense, right? Prestigious career, lots of opportunities, you could make lots of money. So we came to a compromise. We came to an agreement. And the agreement was that I would apply to 2 universities. For one of them, I would apply to study business, and for the other, I'd apply to study law. And if I got business, whether I got law or not, I'll still go study business. But if I didn't get business, I got any other course, and I got law, then I would go study law, right? And so that was the compromise. So soon, the placements arrived, and I had gotten both. So I got business here, and I got law here. And so I was like, cool, a deal's a deal. I'm going to study business. Let me start getting ready. But I quickly realized that that deal didn't really mean much. I had no independence, and so I didn't really have much of a choice. So I was strong-armed into going to study law. Eventually, I decided, just make the best of the situation, go do the best you can. But I was angry. I was very angry about the whole thing. And that, to a degree, is when the whole quest for independence started. The general idea about law is if you're going to pursue a career in law, you need to be willing to put in a lot of time and energy. And so I decided to lean into that challenge, just do something difficult to prove I could do it. I got myself ready. I fully intended to show up, absolutely destroy everyone in my class, 4.0 GPA, just kill everything. But I quickly realized when I started going to class that I had no interest in this whatsoever. I genuinely couldn't care less. But what kept me going was the people that I met. I had an old friend from a previous school that happened to be there as well. So we met early on. I made some really fast friends who are still friends of mine to this day. And I just met a lot of really cool people. And so interacting with these people, getting to know them, getting to learn from them was really the thing that kept me going. To be honest, if I didn't like the people in my class, I probably would have dropped out after 2 weeks. But the people were cool. I made really good friends. And they kind of, kept me going. But I always had in the back of my mind that the point of coming to university was to get an education so I could get work, right? And this would probably be a career that I would devote multiple years of my life to. I had this thing in the back of my mind that just kept telling me this is not the thing, this is just not the thing. I always had very specific interests. All throughout high school, I would study, I would get excellent grades, and that kind of gave me the freedom to sometimes just run away from class, spend some time making music or something, just something that I found a lot more interesting. I've never really been great at doing things I didn't want to do because I'm very stubborn sometimes. And the longer I tried to throw myself into my coursework, the more difficult it became to do that. But I had my friends with me and we were having a good time. So I went through my entire first year and then I left school. I came back home and I was sent to an internship at this really, really nice law firm. And it was basically the same thing. I liked the people there. They were really cool. I made good friends. But the work that I was doing, I had no interest in whatsoever. And this was me as a first year. So I didn't know much. I wasn't being given that much work. So I had a lot of downtime. But even the work that I was being given, I just really didn't care about at all. And the routine of it kind of made it worse, having to wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m., whatever time, get ready and then leave the house to beat traffic to get to work, to then spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half doing nothing, and then be given work that I just didn't want to do either way. It was a difficult time, but initially I could kind of make it through. I knew it was only for a month, but after the first week, I just started to future pace. I was on the way back home. I just started to think at some point I will be a second year, right? And I'll be given more of this work I don't want to do. And then I'll be a third year, and then I'll be a fourth year, and I'll go on to become a lawyer, and I'll get this job, and I'll be doing this same work that I just don't care for at all. And I would just replay that in my mind over and over and over again. It went from feeling like I was just doing things that I wasn't really interested in doing, and more to feeling like I was taking time away from the things that I actually wanted to be doing, because I had this picture in my mind of what I wanted my life to look like. And I was certain at that point that if I continued down this path, my life wasn't going to look like that. And I couldn't think of anything that would be more painful, So after my second week of that internship, I started to have episodes. When I was really young, I was diagnosed with chronic depression, and it's been a challenge for me for quite some time. I had learned how to kind of like maneuver and how to deal with it all through high school. I don't think a majority of people knew when I would have episodes or if I had panic attacks or anything. I don't think people could tell. I got really good at managing myself. But at work, for the last 2 weeks, it would just happen more and more frequently. I found more and more often I would have to excuse myself. I'd just be sitting in the office and I would start to feel very claustrophobic. It would be like paralyzing. I was almost afraid, honestly. I would have to like go out. I'd have to just take a walk for like 30 minutes, just like try to catch my breath, try to calm myself down. There was just so much happening in my mind for some reason. But again, there was a clear end date. 2 weeks, I'll be done with all of this. And so 2 weeks later, I was done. I went back home. I took some time to recuperate and all of that. My second year was just bad from the get-go. Like from the first week, I started having issues. Just no interest in doing anything whatsoever. It just felt like there was no point in doing anything really. I was going to lectures and everything, but all of that was fueled strictly by discipline. If I just had my way, I just would not have gone at that point, and I would have just spent my time doing nothing. But kept going because, hard guy. And soon I realized that this approach just was not sustainable. I just wasn't going to be able to keep this going long enough for it to actually matter. And then there was the night when I had a class that ended really late. I was in class, everything was fine. Then class was over and I just immediately left. I went to the car park and there were these white benches there. So I just sat on one bench. There was like so much going through my mind that I didn't really know what was going through my mind, if that makes sense. I just kind of lay down on the bench and I was just chilling, and then I just broke down. I wasn't crying. I was sitting there in my masculine form and my eyes were leaking. Okay. But I remember it was just like this surge of emotions because that same thing was replaying itself in my mind. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to hate every moment of it. I'm going to be wishing I could be doing the things that I've envisioned myself doing for so long, and I'm just not going to have any other way out. I didn't want to come here in the first place, and now I'm stuck here and there's just nothing I can do. So I was sitting there. A friend of mine walked past and she saw me. It was really dark, so I don't think she could tell that my eyes were leaking, but she was like, "Hey Adam, are you okay?" And I was like, yeah, I'm good, She said, "Cool," and then she walked away. But I decided like I have to do something about this. So I started to call my family. "Hey, listen, this just isn't working for me. Trust me, I've given this a fair shake. I'm not trying to be difficult or anything. This just isn't working. I think I should probably drop out." And the response was the same from almost everyone. It was like, "This is a great opportunity. People all over the country wish they could have this opportunity. You should be grateful to be there. Everyone wants to drop out at some point. No one actually drops out, and everyone is happy in the end that they didn't drop out. This will pass, just give it some time." And I was like, no, I've been giving this time for a long time. It's been months of me trying to make the best of the situation. It's just not working. Help me. People would be like, "Well, what did your parents say? What did this person say? What did that person say?" And I'd be like, "Well, they said I should stay. They said I should be grateful for the opportunity," all that stuff. And then everyone else would go, "Yeah, then that's what you should do." And I understood that. It was like, no one wants to be the one who told me to drop out. And then I dropped out and now my life is in shambles and it's their fault, So after calling a number of people, I just kind of gave up. I was like, yeah, if I call more people, I'm just going to get the same response. And it's really doing nothing to help me right now. So, okay, I'll just think through it. I'll come up with some sort of a plan. And then I'll just like talk to my friends and see what's up. At that point, I had kind of resolved in my mind that the fact that I liked the people in my class wasn't enough of a reason for me to devote my life to this career. And maybe I was just being over dramatic, but that was just genuinely the way I saw it at the time. When I was a kid, my parents had a stationery store. They sold pens and like paper and glue and paper clips and all that stuff. There was one night I heard some conversation. They were saying the store wasn't doing too well and they were probably going to shut it down. I was like, that's a problem. I'm a problem solver, so I'm going to fix that, right? I was too young to have any disbelief in my ability to actually do this. So at the time, I was really interested in origami and paper craft. So I would make these like Naruto ninja stars and kunai and all that stuff. And I was making something and a friend of mine was like, "Can you show me how to make this?" I said, "Cool." So I told him like, tear a sheet out of your notebook, fold it this way, fold it that way. And then I took out my glue and he wanted to use my glue. He didn't have some. So I was like, "Oh, I have extra glue in my bag. If you give me like 20 pesos, I'll give you some glue." So he agreed. and I had my first ever customer in my life. And so I realized, okay, there was probably an opportunity here. So the next day, before we went to school, I stopped by the shop and I took a pack of glue and put it in my backpack. I went back to school. I was making some stuff. I started asking people if they wanted to learn how to make it. So we would be making it, we would get to the point where they needed glue. They didn't have glue. I'd be like, I have glue. It's 20 pesos. It's 50 pesos, you know. And people started paying me to get glue so they can make these little paper toys. And I started bringing money home. I felt good about it. I felt like, yeah, like I'm actually helping the family. Before long, I would spend my entire break time. I wouldn't go out. I wouldn't eat. I spent my entire break time just taking money from people and giving them glue so they could go make little projects. And then my creative arts teacher, he approached me and asked me if I could supply glue for all of the projects. So all of the projects we would do for the year would be around paper and glue. I said, cool. So he gave me a bunch of money, right? So I go home like, yeah, look at all the money I've brought home. My parents are happy. Everyone's happy. Eventually, I had to stop that because I was called to the headmistress's office and I was told that parents were complaining that they were giving their children money for food, but the children weren't eating because they were spending all of their money on glue. So I had to stop selling it. But that experience kind of instilled this belief in me that making money was easy. So when I was facing this issue, I thought back to that conversation about why I couldn't do psychology. And the problem was that I wouldn't be able to get a job. I wouldn't be able to make money. I wouldn't be able to take care of myself and my family. So I thought, well, if I can just find alternative ways to make money, I could drop out and, you know, no one would be angry with me or anything. And obviously money is easy to make, so that shouldn't be too hard. And so I came up with this plan to just make a bunch of money, so much money that when I presented my case to my family and said, this is why I dropped out, they would understand, right? They would understand that there was actually something there. And so then I went to my friends. I started telling some of my friends I was going to drop out. Some took it well, some did not take it well. Some, you know, stuff happened that was just not ideal. And it was a very difficult time for me and for my friends as well. The conclusion was like, I wasn't really going to have support from a lot of them, but I did have a few that were still in my corner and were like, you know, just do what you need to do. But I was still looking for someone to give me the go ahead because I was afraid. And so I wanted someone to tell me that I could do this, you know. But after a week or two, I just kind of gave up and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give this a try. If it fails, it fails, you know. And I didn't feel like anything could be worse than not giving it a try. It was painful enough that I was willing to fail rather than just not give it a try in the first place. So I set out to put this plan in motion. If you want to learn like some of the stuff I did, you can watch my first video. It will break down how I started to see results in business. I was doing all of the basics, right? Just go on Google, search for how to make money online, try and sell things to businesses around you, all of that. But I wasn't alone because my roommate at the time, this guy, he was just a truant. He just didn't like school. And he was kind of going through a similar experience and he was planning to drop out as well. We would discuss these things because at that time, whenever someone would give me a reason why I shouldn't drop out, it would just like break my entire worldview, right? And I'd be like, I'm making a mistake, I shouldn't do this. And then I would discuss these things with him and we helped each other think things through. So we weren't just making emotional decisions. There was some actual reason behind what we're doing. And then eventually we decided, hey, you know, let's just do this. Worst case scenario, I'll have your back, you have mine, right? So the work began. I tried thing after thing after thing. I was expecting things to come easily, but they did not at all. And after like a few months of just trying, I had started to kind of give up, right? I felt like everything was against me. There were some businesses I tried that could have worked, but because of my location, I didn't have access to PayPal. I didn't have access to payment processors and all of this. At some point, I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place because I didn't want to go back, but I felt like there was so much against me that there was no way this thing could work. You know, there was this one night I was in a hostel called Pentagon. I was at one of the blocks and I was just thinking through things. I was just trying to figure out if there was anything else I could try and I wasn't coming up with anything. So I just called one of my friends just so like I could have someone to talk to and I could take my mind off this stuff. So she came, we were sitting there, and the minute I started to speak, I just broke down. I just entirely broke down. And it was not pleasant. It was a difficult experience. But when you're in those situations, you just go get some sleep, you wake up the next day, and then you try again, And so I kept trying stuff, and eventually stuff started to work, right? And by that point, I started to build some confidence, because at that point, everything people would tell me about why I shouldn't drop out, I had an answer for, because I had spent time thinking about it. And so there were no real objections that were coming my way that I thought held merit. My friends had interventions for me, probably didn't go the way they were hoping they would go. I started to hear stuff that people were saying, like behind my back, about my decision and how that affected my family and so on and so forth. But it didn't affect me as much, because I had proof of concept that this could actually work, and I was starting to gain more confidence in this. And so I kept going, and I worked on this for the next 3 years. I technically dropped out in my second year, but just because I wanted to make sure I was as safe as possible, I didn't go to class for my second year, but I still wrote the examinations. I waited until it was like 2 weeks to exams, and then I just borrowed study notes from my guy. I wrote the exams, and my grades weren't too bad. But 3 years down the line, I had actually started to see results. I was seeing some degree of consistency, and I was making a lot more. This entire time, because I felt like I had to go at this by myself, I hadn't told my parents that I had dropped out. And so it was in my final year, getting to graduation, when I started to see consistent results. I was like, okay, I think it's time to tell everyone what I did. And so I met with my mom and dad. I explained to them, I actually dropped out 3 years ago, so I'm not going to be graduating, but this is what I'm making right now. They weren't completely excited about it, but I think they were still happy that I hadn't wasted all of that time, right? And I had been able to build something that could still take good care of me. Because of currency differences, at the time it was difficult for people to believe how much I was making. But when you converted it into like dollars, it wasn't really that crazy. Eventually, things kind of calmed down. And since then, I've definitely had ups and downs. But I would say I'm closer to that life that I envisioned for myself, because I made this decision, So a lot of people have asked me if they should drop out too, if I think it was all worth it. I'm not great at doing things that I don't want to do. If I don't want to do something, I just really don't see the point in doing it. If you're doing something, you want to be one of the best, right? If you don't love something, the chances that you're going to beat the people that love that thing are just not great. And it's important to remember that people always say you might go and try and do the thing that you love and fail, but you can also do something you don't love and still fail. Overall, I think you have a better chance of succeeding if you're doing something you actually love. So I would consider why you want to leave and what the goal is overall. In a lot of cases, actually staying in the university will align with what you're trying to achieve, right? If you want to be a lawyer, you should definitely be in school. If you want to be a doctor, you should definitely be in school. But you might find that the things you specifically want to do may not require you to get a college degree. There's two sides to this overall. One is try not to make this decision alone. Make sure you have other people in the conversation so they can point out the things that you're ignoring, maybe because you're in pain and you just want to find a way out. But on the other hand, trust yourself. And sometimes it's useful to assume that you're right and everyone else is wrong. But understand that if you're going to trust yourself, you have to be able to state the reasons why you shouldn't do this better than anyone else can, and still be able to come up with more reasons why you should do this. And if you can do that and accept the fact that if it all goes wrong, it's all on you and you're not going to have anyone else to blame, then it might be worth considering. Even if you're in a really difficult situation, take your time, process things, think through things, and once you actually do come to a decision, focus all of your energy on making sure that that decision turns out to be a good one.